Hey LeGrand Alive, welcome to Coffee with Will. I'm Will Bowman and I'm here today with Mona Williams, who is the local circuit court judge currently, and she has been the local circuit court judge for about 4 months now, and she is here today to talk with me a little bit about justice, her life, her story, and her candidacy to remain circuit court judge in this upcoming election. So this episode was brought to you by Grand Ron Hospital, Northwest Furniture and Mattress, Anything to Digital, EONI, and Med Transport. Mona, thank you so much for joining me here today. We've had to reschedule this interview a couple times, but we have successfully both gotten into the studio. We're very excited to be doing that. And so I'm going to stop talking and actually ask her some questions. So Mona, thank you so much for joining me here today. So before we get into all the nitty gritty of all that kind of stuff, I just kind of want to know a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about your story. If I recall correctly, you grew up in Eastern Oregon and you've stuck around. How did that all work itself out?
Well, I'm fifth generation Wallowa County.
Wow.
And I've got 4 generations of family that lived here in Union County. My grandparents and great-grandparents on my mother's side are all in the cemetery in Elgin.
Wow.
So we make a Memorial Day run that starts in Wallowa County and goes all the way through Union County.
Just kind of spend the whole day just driving around, visiting graves and those kinds of things. So you've been around for a while, putting up flowers. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we do that. I grew up in Wallowa County and graduated from Joseph High School. I went to Eastern Oregon University for 3 terms and then took the summer off, worked at the Oregon State Park, Wallowa Lake, and then came back to Eastern Oregon and did 1 term and then decided to get married.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes. I just recently got married myself.
Yeah. Well, I was young.
Wow.
Yeah. Compared to when people decide to get married today, I was 19.
Oh, wow. This was like, you were really young.
I was really young. But back in the early 70s, that's what girls did.
Wow.
So I did. I married the love of my life, still married to
I was going to say, you're still married 45 years later. That's quite an accomplishment. Put that on your resume and stamp it, you know?
So then I, after that, went to work and supported Bill while he finished up at Oregon State University. And then we spent 5 years in Southern California. Both of our both of our sons were born down there, one in San Bernardino and one in Palm Springs. And then when our oldest son was about 3, Bill was working for UPS, and one of the drivers came and they had just done a law enforcement search through the elementary school where his son was going to school.
Oh, goodness.
And they found gang things like knives and chains, and Bill came home and told me about it, and we put our house on the market the next day.
Oh my goodness, wow, that was a quick decision.
It was. Bill came back and went to work for a tire company in Enterprise, and I stayed in California and sold the house, and then the boys and I came up, and then from there it was just sort of, I think fate just stepped in for us, and we were able to make it work and stay in Wallowa County. And Bill ended up working for the Farm Service Agency for 32 years, I think, and retired about 3 years ago.
And then you went back to school and studied for law, became, what was your official title over in Wallowa again?
Well, at first I was just in private practice.
That's right, yeah.
I did that for 17 years.
Yeah.
Did all kinds of civil law, some criminal defense, a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
And then in 2006, I decided to run for district attorney.
That's right, yes.
And became district attorney, started in 2007, and did that up until May of this year.
Wow, and then at which time you were appointed by Governor Kate Brown to be the Union and Wallowa County Circuit Court Judge.
I was. I applied along with some other attorneys from all of them from Union County. Yeah. And went through interviews we had to be interviewed by a panel of attorneys, and former Judge Brian Dretke was on that panel, and that narrowed it down to 2, and from there, those 2 were investigated by the Oregon State Police. As one detective told me, I will know what you have for breakfast. So they did. They talked to everybody.
I have criminals for breakfast. I'll tell you that.
Or Fruit Loops, whatever.
Or for lunch. Or for Loops. Yeah. Lots of different colors in either category. You know.
Yeah. So after that, Governor Brown called me and told me that she had decided to appoint me, and that was effective the 1st of June. And so I've been Circuit Court Judge since June 1st.
So what was it like when you first heard that you were going to be elected to Union County Circuit, or Union and Wallowa County Circuit Court Judge? Was it exciting for you? How did that feel?
It was exciting. Being a judge is something that I've always thought that I wanted to do. It just never, there were openings that came up before during my career, but there were things that were happening. One, my mom was ill and was living with me at one point, so that wasn't going to work. And things just really didn't fall into place until Judge West announced his retirement, and Bill was retired, so he could go wherever I went. And he told me, he said, well, there are 2 golf courses in Union County, so that sounds good to him. So he's always been very supportive of what I do. And so I was excited. I was nervous.
Yeah.
Anytime you take on something new and something as important as being a judge, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I like to do things right.
Yeah.
So there's that, that feeling of, am I going to get this right?
I feel like you have to be a little bit of a perfectionist to be in law. You can't. Laissez-faire attitudes are not exactly the most conducive to such a technical profession as you hold. You know what I'm saying?
It is. It requires attention to detail and to procedure and a lot of reading. Reading case law, staying up on the law, knowing when the Court of Appeals makes changes or the Supreme Court makes changes, and how those affect what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it, but it's something that I enjoy. Obviously, I've been at it for almost 29 years now.
Wow.
Working on my 30th year. So.
Yeah. So now that all sort of being said, you've spent this whole time practicing law. And now you have been a circuit court judge for 4 months. You're coming up for, I don't know if it's technically re-election or confirmation or whatever in the general election coming up here next month. What have you learned about this position that you maybe didn't know? Is it what you expected? Is it different? Are you still as passionate about it as when you first applied for it?
Well, to take the last part of that question first, I think I'm more passionate than I was when I started. When I started, I understood that there was a lot to it. What I didn't really understand was how much I would love doing it until I started doing it. I've always loved the law. I love the technical aspect of it. I love the details, but I love the fact that it's about people. The law is about people, and I'm very much a people person.
Yeah. And
being able to sit in the courtroom and listen to people's stories. Judges are not in a position where they get to help and help solve people's problems. That's what attorneys do.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, attorneys advocate for their clients, and that's their job, to see if they can help them figure out ways out of problems or, solve issues that those people might have. But a judge, that's not what a judge does. A judge is more like an arbitrator.
Yeah, they're more middle ground. They're less focused on representing one side of something, and you're arbitrating really the whole shindig.
That's exactly right. I did a trial a couple weeks ago. It was scheduled to be an 8-day trial. It ended up going for 5. And it was what we call Measure 11. I don't know if you're familiar with Measure 11.
No.
It's the more violent person crimes under Measure 11, which was passed along a number of years ago by the general public, basically set some mandatory minimum sentences for violent crimes. And so those are called Measure 11 crimes. And this was a Measure 11 trial. So it was very important. And there's a process in the trial where the attorneys are asking questions of the jurors to kind of get to know them.
Yeah.
And it's called voir dire. And during voir dire, one of the attorneys asked members of the jury about what they saw as the attorney's role, what they saw about their role, and what they asked one gentleman, so what do you think the judge's role is? And this gentleman said, well, the judge is the gatekeeper. And I thought that was very, very appropriate because that is what a judge does. A judge, especially in a trial setting, is responsible for making sure that both sides have an opportunity to present their case, but to do it within the rules. Because the rules of evidence, the rules of the court, are really what establish that ground floor where everybody gets the same chance. And so that's what a judge does. A judge doesn't advocate for either side, but a judge is the person that makes sure that both sides play within the rules, and that only evidence that is allowed under the rules of evidence comes in. And then just make sure that the trial itself is conducted in an orderly, professional, and well, I don't want to use the word fair again, but
well, it does sound like that's kind of a big part of it. Is kind of almost a level playing field. You're arbitrating and trying to keep a level playing field so that both members of the case have equal opportunity to get justice.
And you said that you didn't think like an attorney.
I'm really good at synthesizing. I'm good at synthesizing. I'm not good at details. Big picture, big picture.
Well, you did a great job of synthesizing that. That's
Perfect.
Exactly it.
Perfect. Yeah. And that's cool. Because I think and this is, I talked a little bit with Wes Williams about this whole concept as well when I did my coffee with Will with him. And so this is kind of, so my question that I'm thinking of as I'm listening to you is, you've spent so long advocating, being an advocate for the people here, this person here, this person here, this person here, this person here, all your clients, you've been an advocate for them for so long. How do you step out of the role of an advocate and into the role of an arbitrator?
That's where I think some of my strength comes in.
Yeah.
Because if you look at my career, I started out as an attorney for private citizens, dealing with people who had issues that involved other people. That's what the civil law is. Is two people that have some sort of a disagreement between them. That's civil lawsuits. That's what they're about. Two people arguing about something between them. Then in 2000, and I did that for 17 years. And then in 2007, when I became the DA, I was no longer, then I was prosecuting criminal cases. And I took an oath when I was sworn in as the district attorney to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon and enforce the laws of the state. That's my oath. And I took that very seriously. And in doing that, you're no longer just advocating for one person. At that point, I became someone that had to look at the cases that were brought to me by law enforcement, because that's who does the investigation, sort of like, the show Law and Order.
Dun, 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 dun,
yeah,
dun,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so law enforcement would investigate a case and then they bring it to me. And I have to look at that case from the standpoint of, is there a victim in the case? And if so, are those victims' rights being upheld. And the Constitution provides certain rights to victims. And so I have that constitutional obligation as a DA. Then I had a constitutional obligation to the defendants to make sure that their rights were not violated. Were they given Miranda? Were they advised of their rights before, questions were asked? Was the search done properly? And I had to analyze that from that direction as well. And then there was a third aspect of it, and that was, is this an issue that involves public safety? Do I not only have a defendant and a victim, but do I also have something that could cause risk within our community? And one of those things that I consider as a part of that is the drug issues. Is this somebody that's delivering drugs, selling drugs within our community? Is that a threat to our children? Or is this a person whose possession of drugs is just for their own personal use? So maybe in that instance, if it's just somebody that was possessing and using methamphetamine but wasn't involved to the point where they were delivering it or manufacturing it, you look at that a little bit differently because you don't have the public safety issue. Was this a situation where firearms were used? And one of the things that I've heard about people with regard to me and firearms is that I'm against the use of firearms. And I will say that I'm against the use of firearms when it comes to people committing a crime. That is something that I dealt with a lot when I was the district attorney. And there were times when, I said this person shouldn't have firearms. But it was because I felt like that person was a threat to the community, not because I felt that people's constitutional rights to possess firearms shouldn't be upheld, but because that particular person was a threat
to the community. So it's almost like because as a district attorney, as an attorney, you're advocating for the rights of one person. You're advocating for the rights. But when you become a judge, your advocacy expands to all people who are involved with the case. So you're advocating for the rights of the defendant, you're advocating for the rights of the victim, and also the rights of the public to live safely and without fear of being shot or their children being sold illicit drugs to, and so on and so forth. So it's almost like you're doing kind of the same thing. It's just you're sort of expanding your scope a lot. And
I agree with that. Except for one little thing.
Go ahead, change.
And that
correct me, please.
All right. There are people that say I like to do that. I have a red pen that I like a lot. As a district attorney, I was not advocating for victims or the defendants. I represented the state, the people of the state as a whole. So I wasn't advocating on behalf of any of those people. I had to take all of those rights into consideration in making a decision about whether or not a case got prosecuted and how it got prosecuted. Now, as a judge, I still have those same rights to protect. I have the rights of the defendant. I have the rights of the victim. And I have issues of public safety. When I'm looking at a person that's been charged with a crime, and the question is, should this person be released? As an example. What I want to know is, what's this person's criminal history like? Does this person have convictions for violent crimes? Does this person have a record that shows that he's not going to appear at subsequent proceedings, things like that? So at that point, I am looking at a public safety issue there as well. And at times in sentencings in criminal cases as well, I'm looking at that. So when it comes to the criminal law, as a judge, I'm still looking at those same rights. I'm just looking at it from a different standpoint, because now I'm not analyzing the case and deciding should it go forward. I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, this is coming into my courtroom, and I need to make sure that the defendant and the victim and the at that point in court, that's who we're looking at, the defendant, victim, and it's the evidence then.
Yeah.
What evidence comes in, and making sure that it is evidence that's only allowed by the rules.
Yeah.
My own opinions about whether or not a case, they don't matter anymore. When I was the DA, my opinions mattered.
Now it's the law. Now it's the rules, and now it's like, okay, how do all of these things fit into the letter of the law, and the rights that are allocated out to these individuals by that?
Exactly.
Wow. And that's a very big responsibility. I mean,
it is a big responsibility.
That's, and I'm sure we could sit here and talk about this all day, but I mean, is that a difficult responsibility sometimes, to have to like sit down and take this huge pool of people who have rights, and to be able to know, first of all, know those rights, which is where the detail comes in, and then second, to be able to weigh limited evidence to judge whose rights have been infringed upon? Is that difficult?
It's very difficult at times.
Yeah.
I think even more difficult for me, and I've been told that I don't have a very good poker face, so I'm working on that.
Neither do I, but then again, I'm not in a profession in which I have to have a poker face.
Sometimes it's hard for me when I am, because I'm sitting on the bench and this is a trial, and other attorneys are working this case, they're litigating it, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, why aren't you objecting to that? That's hearsay.
Yeah.
But
you can't say anything.
That's not my job anymore. My job is to, when the other side objects to something, determine whether or not that objection should be upheld, or whether or not the question should go ahead and come in. It's not my job to try the case anymore. So that's been a little bit interesting for me. And as I said, I'm learning to have a poker face and not broadcast what I'm thinking.
Interesting. So you don't have the right to be like, that's hearsay, inadmissible. You only have the right to uphold it if somebody else says that's hearsay, inadmissible. Then you're like, yep, that's hearsay, inadmissible. But you can't come out of the thing and say that's inadmissible.
No, that's not my job.
Interesting.
Because
I think that we think about judges in the context of like, you are the one that judges the case. You are the one that sees these things and like makes the decisions. Whereas maybe that's not as true as we think it is.
It isn't, and especially for trial court judges.
Yeah.
Now, there's different kinds of judges. There's trial court judges like what I am. And so we're looking at cases at that trial court stage. Then say somebody objects and I allow something to come in that maybe I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Then the recourse for that person is through the Court of Appeals, because now I've made a mistake of law. And so where those things get fixed then is at the next level, and that's the level where the changes in the law are sometimes made. I don't get to make changes in the law. I just have to follow the law. I have to uphold the Constitution.
Or make sure that the people in your courtroom follow the law, essentially. Yeah.
Correct. I don't get to make law. Once in a very rare occasion, a case or an issue will come up that has never been actually looked at before.
Yeah.
And so that's what's called an issue of first impression. And once in a while, those come to a trial court judge. Maybe a new law that hasn't been interpreted by the higher courts yet. And so a judge gets to make law at the trial court level, but that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Those kinds of cases are actually those are decided at either the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court level.
Wow, wow, very cool, very cool. All right, so we're kind of running out of time here, but before we get in there, I've learned a lot about what a judge does and what they don't do, and that's really cool. And so I kind of want to touch a little bit on why someone should maybe choose you for this position. Like, where the elections are coming up next month, so maybe just give me a couple reasons why you think that you would be best suited to retain the position of circuit court judge.
Okay. Well, I think my experience is one area. Being a circuit court judge requires that day-to-day work with the law. Once in a while we get a big trial like the one I had, but a lot of the work that a judge does is just day-to-day making sure that procedure is met. For instance, we'll take juvenile dependency cases, which are cases where a child is removed from a home because there's a risk there. And so DHS now has custody of this child, or DHS is asking me to give them custody of a child that they've taken into protection. And that's a day-to-day, this point to this point to this point within the procedure type of case. And so it's not about the trying of those cases or the have I argued those kinds of cases to the Court of Appeals, anything like that. It's that day-to-day process. And that's something that as the district attorney, I did. I was in court all the time, just on those day-to-day things. And so those are things that I know. Those are things that I have experience with. And I think I have more experience in those kinds of areas with that day-to-day work than my opponent does. Yeah.
Sounds like being a judge is not Law and Order every day. It is mostly just sitting in the office going over procedural things.
Well, a lot of it is probably for every hour in the courtroom, there's about 3 hours of going through what's been filed in small claims court. Judges have to sign off on all of that. Probates. There's a lot of those that are uncontested, but there's that process that you have to go through. They have to have so many days you get this order and so many days you get that order. And so all of that is something that judges have to sign off on. And I've got experience in all of those areas, not only as, in my prior practice and as the DA, but I now have 4 months of experience doing it as a judge. And that, I've learned a lot. And I've learned that I would really like to keep doing the job as well.
Very cool, very cool. Well, awesome. Thank you, Mona. I really appreciate you coming in and chatting with me here today.
Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. It was my pleasure. And thank you, LeGrand Alive, for tuning in to Coffee with Will. This episode was brought to you by Grand Ron Hospital, Northwest Furniture and Mattress, Anything 2 Digital, EONI, and Med Transport. We'll see you next time on Coffee with Will. Be sure to tune into LeGrand Alive for more local content. I'm Will Bowman.